Hello, hello. Welcome to the webinar. Five biggest mistakes business owners do and put them out of business and how you can avoid them. This is the topic today. My name is Roland and I'll be hosting this webinar. And I'm really glad to have here with me Eric Edmeades. Hello, Eric.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Yes. Just for a short intro, I wanted to share a comment from a person that a friend of mine who sent something about Eric. What he said is, I've been attending Eric's events all over the world and met him personally. I get to know him as a caring and loving person, and he's absolutely world class in best meaning. And what he's sharing, when he's sharing the stage with world's best and celebrities, most of them are left in Eric's shadow. And it's not a praise, it's reality. When he's in Estonia, it's a sin not to go to his event. He's behind my biggest and most positive changes in my life. And I'm thankful for Eric and Roland for bringing such a world-class knowledge to Estonia. Super thanks. And he also said that I'm not even getting commission from Roland for saying this. And this is Christian. He's a serial entrepreneur, and I'm really glad to have this kind of feedback from people who have attended Eric's seminars before, and this is what happens constantly. We have so many great feedback testimonials coming from all the people. When Eric's been here to Estonia many times, whenever we have multi-speaker event, he's always getting the highest rating, and it's not only in Estonia, it's happening in different countries. And Eric is also a citizen of Estonia, so that's another. He's like part of our family, and talking about family, her daughter was made in Estonia, so here's many connections to Estonia here. Some of the things what we're gonna do here today is we're gonna give away some giveaways, some gifts for those who are being active, asking questions, and really participating with us. And also we're gonna give away one Business Freedom Experience event ticket that's happening on March 12 to 16 in Tallinn. And this is for those people who have bought 12 or more books that I recently launched. And so that's gonna happen also throughout this webinar. And what we'll be covering here is 5 biggest mistakes and how you can not only avoid them, but also use them in your advantage, and how to achieve business freedom. What are the steps for that? And also we're gonna a little bit share about you the opportunity for coming to the Business Freedom Experience event, because it's after a while again happening in Estonia, which is, I'm really excited about that, because this is one of the events that has really brought amazing results for many Estonian entrepreneurs, and the results and the amazing things keep on coming out. But Eric, can you tell why is it important to achieve business freedom, or at least move towards business freedom? Or maybe what happens if you don't?
Well, I'm a big fan of quality of life. And what I mean is that I kind of feel like life's not that long, really, and so I'm a big fan of saying what has to happen for us to enjoy the absolute most of our life that we can. And I think that business freedom, or let's say really well practiced entrepreneurship, is maybe today's very best opportunity for an incredibly high quality of life with a lot of personal freedom. If you think about what life is like in many employment situations, is people are trading their time and their quality of life for some money so that they can pay the rent and eat food and buy clothes and go on the occasional vacation. Now, some people are very lucky that they have a job that's really, really their passion for some time, but mostly that's not the way employment works. And then business ownership seems to be a choice. And at one end, the option of business ownership is that entrepreneurship is the ultimate expression of personal freedom. When somebody has built a compelling, successful operating business, they really get to choose how they live. They get to choose where they live, how often they travel, what they buy, what kind of house they live in. They have a huge amount of personal freedom because they've built a business, and that business is creating this time and financial freedom for them. On the other hand, if entrepreneurship is practiced badly, frankly, it's worse than having a job, Because now what is going on is sometimes the business owner ends up having 3 or 4 or 10 different jobs and not somebody else to write the paycheck, right? And so I think that when people make the decision to get into business, they really, truly are at a fork in the road. And down the one fork is an incredibly difficult, stressful life. And the vast majority of the people that go down that fork will fail. And down the other fork, there is a life of real, true business freedom, where your business or your companies are independent, organic beings that operate themselves with very little assistance from you in the end. And that allows you a huge amount of personal freedom. The challenge is, for many people, that sounds almost impossible, but I assure you that it is absolutely possible to build a business that might like having you around, that you might like being in, but that doesn't need you to be there.
But why people fail on moving towards business freedom, or why where is the point where the biggest mistakes done in order going towards business freedom?
Well, I think it's really easy to see. I mean, all you really kind of have to do is look at the business failure rates. You know, the vast majority of businesses won't even make it to 5 years. So I think we should look at the mistakes that people make in the first 5 years, because that's clearly the most dangerous time. And then if you look at that 5 years, what you'll find is that the majority of the businesses that fail in that first 5 years fail in the first year, right? Most of them fail in the first year. If you make it to the second year, you might make it to the third year, but the numbers are down, down, down. And so when we look at it that way, what are some of the big questions or mistakes that we make in the first year that are either causing the failure of the business, or perhaps even worse than the failure of the business is the success of the business, but based on principles that have the business owner working harder than they ever did before and not making enough money to justify it. So some of the mistakes, I mean, I thought a lot about it for this program, for this particular webinar, and I have some in mind that I made and that really held me back. And I think that by sharing them today, we can help you not have to make the mistake. You know, I think first thing is I want to step back. The word mistake, maybe we should change the way we look at it, because I think that nothing is really a mistake unless you do it the second time expecting a different result. So if you try something and fails, it wasn't a mistake. It was an experiment. But if you conduct the exact same experiment again, expecting a different result, that's a mistake. So when I say that, some of these mistakes here, I've made them enough time to call them mistakes. Some of them, I made the mistake once as an experiment and I learned from it. My hope is that I can share my experiments with you, and then you don't have to conduct the same experiments. At least that's my goal. So go ahead, Roland.
Yeah, sounds good. It's just, can you give a little, just short background on the business freedom side of your experience? Because I know you have really good story on that side, how you started your first business and how fast you were able to do it second time. So
when I started my first company, a lot of people go, wow, Eric, you were so brave. You started your first company. You were a brave entrepreneur. I was like, no, I relocated to England with a job that I had with an American company. And within a month of getting to England, that company had really treated me badly. And so I quit my job. And so suddenly now I was in England with no job and no work visa and a wife and a baby on the way and a new dog and 2 cars and a house. So I had to pay the rent and I couldn't go get a job because I didn't have a visa and I didn't have the money to fly home. So I started a business, frankly, because I had to. I wasn't particularly brave about it, but I made some decisions early on that set me up for success and that set me up for eventual business freedom. And so there are some things that I did in the early stages that meant that after 6 years, no kidding, I didn't have to go to work anymore. My company ran smoothly. I remember showing up at the office one day and I had a project sheet. You know, there was a sheet that my assistant would every morning fill out. Here are the calls you have to make. Here's the projects you're working on. And the project sheet was on my desk and it had my name and the date, but the rest was blank. So I went to my assistant and said, hello, we've been doing this for years. How come this is blank? You got to get it done before I arrive. Did I come in a little earlier today? You know, what's going on? And she goes, nope, it's blank because there's nothing to put on it, because there's nothing you need to do. And that was kind of the first time when I really had business freedom. My company hired people when it needed to. It fired people when it needed to. It did its own marketing campaigns. The company was running. And so what's really cool though, is that I ended up selling that business. And when I started my next company, which was in a different industry, but a very similar style of business, technology based and so forth, that time when I started the business, it only took 18 months before I didn't have to be there anymore. Why? Well, because I learned the first time some tricks, and I made some experiments, and I didn't have to make those experiments again the second time. And so, I've been very, I guess, fortunate in business, but I've also worked hard and I've made a lot of experiments. I've probably made more mistakes than most, but what I didn't do is repeat a lot of the mistakes too often, because I understood that that was the only real mistake.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this. It's really good. And it's also so many amazing results that you brought to people. And in Estonia, there's plenty of like that. There's people who, I know a guy who's like 1.5 years after attending your course, he had 10 times the revenue he had before, and just a couple of years or a year ago, he now sold this business, so he got total business freedom. And there's another example from someone going in 2.5 years from 1 employee to 30 employees and doing business internationally and having more freedom while doing it. And also there's another example of a business owner 1 year after attending the business freedom experience. What he said, he had doubled the staff, he had quadrupled, like 4 or 5 times more revenue, and he had tripled the production. So, and also while having more free time. And also, I think you can share there's this Norwegian example of the dentist. So you mentioned this. Can you share that? Because this is also really interesting.
It was kind of funny. We had this at our business freedom experience. We had some clients there, and the funny thing was, at the time, I needed to have some dental work done, and I wasn't planning to have it done in Norway. Everything's really expensive in Norway. Why do that? But I got talking with them, and they said, "Why don't you come to our clinic?" So I went to their clinic, and when I got there, it was a nice little clinic, but the work they were doing required me to go over some months. I was having a dental implant put in from an accident that I'd had. And so I went, I had to go every few months over the space of more than a year. And so then I went another time, and now they weren't just one little office, but they'd like taken over the floor that they were on. And then I went another time, and they had taken the floor upstairs as well. They'd grown so much. And then what was also really cool is I got there, and they had I could just see the things that they'd implemented from the business freedom experience. Like, here's a really cool idea that came up during a really powerful idea creation process we do during the program. Is they realize that a lot of times when people are coming in for dental work, that they're really, really stressed before they come in, and they're really, really stressed after they come in, which means that their total memory of the experience is stressful. So somebody said, well, why don't you just create an environment where they can really de-stress, so when they leave with a positive thought. I got there, and they'd created this really cool meditation room with 0 gravity beds and goggles for meditation. And so now people go in, and let's say they need a root canal. They get to relax before they go for the root canal. They come out of the root canal, and they get to lie in this dark room and listen to beautiful music. And they can even have a massage, and then they can leave. And so now they leave, and they go, I love going to the dentist, even though they might have been like tortured for an hour in the middle. So it was really great watching them grow and grow and grow and grow, but also implement and implement and implement. It was really, it was heartwarming. Well, here's a funny thing. I got another one, we get letters like that almost every day from people that they've turned their business around, or they've, or they've sold it, or that they're traveling around the world. We get lots of these. And the other day we had a really good one come in, and I was just reading it, and Elise says, what are you reading? And I just read it to her, and she goes, that's incredible. And I looked at it again. I go, oh my God, it really is incredible. Like, it's so incredible. But we get them so often that I kind of almost got like, it's another one. But no, it's what drives me to do what I'm doing, because I really, when I see one letter like that, what I see immediately is the years of increased quality of life that come from that. When somebody stops struggling to pay the rent, when somebody stops worrying about payroll, when somebody stops having to be at work, obviously they're able to do things like focus on their health, or spend time with their family, or travel the world, be able to afford their children's education and vacations and stuff. So it changes things so dramatically.
Yeah, that's so amazing. That's so amazing about what you do, and how you help business owners to create this freedom, and not only in business, in every area of their life. But before we go to the 5 mistakes, there's probably in some of the people mind, they're thinking, well, there's all those other business owners, they're getting that, but it's, my business is different, I can't get that. So why do you have to, what would you say for those people? Like
it happens all the time. People always hear, oh, business freedom sounds good for everybody else, but not for me. And so I've heard every reason why business freedom isn't for somebody else. And then, of course, it only ever takes about a 4-minute conversation for them to realize that it's for them as well. I'll give you the most classic example. The most common type of objection that I get from people is, there's two. One is they go, yeah, but I have a passion business. I love what I do. So why would I want freedom? And then the other one that's similar is, yeah, but I have a practice-based business. I'm a doctor, a lawyer, a chiropractor, a massage therapist, a psychotherapist, a business coach. And so I am the business, so I can't have business freedom. And so, there's a couple things that I like to point out in that situation is that if you are lucky enough to have a business that's built around your passion, that you really love what you're doing all the time, well, you should absolutely be grateful for that, because that's not the norm. But then I have to ask you a different question, and that is a few different questions. The one is, what percentage of your time are you doing that thing that you love? So let's say you're a chiropractor. What percentage of your time are you actually working with clients and doing adjustments? If you are, a coach, what percentage of your time are you spending doing actually the work you love? Or are you having to deal with hiring, and are you having to deal with stationery ordering and tax returns? And are you having to deal with all kinds of administrative stuff, or are you doing the thing you love? So one of the things that's really important to realize is the first level of business freedom is building a business that lets you do what you love the majority of the time. That's the first level of business freedom, is just building a business that allows you to do what you love the majority of the time. So if you love coaching people, then you should be spending 99% of your time coaching people, and you shouldn't be spending 20% of your time selling over here and 15% of your time working on the website and 12% of your time worrying about some other thing over here. No, you should build a business that handles those things so that you get to work on your passion. But then the second question is, what happens, in your passion-based business, what happens if something happens to you? What happens to the business? What happens to your family? What happens if something happens where you can't, here's the one example. You might remember, of course, last year, those kids in Thailand that got stuck in that cave. And the first thing I thought to myself was, I've got 2 children. I've got a boy and a girl. And I got to tell you that if either one of them ended up trapped in a cave in Thailand, I would go and put the diving equipment on myself, and I would go into the cave in Thailand, because they were saying that these children might be in there for 4 months because of the way the water was, that it might take 4 months to get them out. And so I would not be okay with having my child sit in that cave alone or with a bunch of other kids for 4 months. I'd have to do something about it. Well, you know what? I could. And so when people tell me, well, I have a passion-based business, I go, yeah, but what would happen if you needed to spend a month with a member of your family healing or celebrating or doing something different? Or what would ever happen to your family if something happened to you? And so the next level of business freedom, where your business doesn't need you anymore, that's about personal security. That's about providing for your family. That's about knowing that you're safe. So I think that business freedom applies to every kind of business in the world. Level 1 is a business that is so robust and working so well that you get to spend the vast majority of time just doing what you love. You show up for work, you're doing what you love. An hour later, you're doing what you love. At the end of the day, you kind of need to remind yourself to leave because you're doing what you love. And then level 2 of business freedom is where you don't even have to do what you love if you don't love it anymore, or if an emergency comes up. And I think if we're not aiming for those things, probably we shouldn't be in business.
Yeah, that's sounds true, really. So getting into the 5 big mistakes, what are they, and how to avoid them, and how to turn them into advantage? Let's take.
Well, all right. I'm going to go through some of the mistakes that I've made, and and kind of discuss how I made them and how to kind of recover from them. The one is doing it all, or you could word that differently, and that is not asking for help. And this is a very common trait among entrepreneurs, because frankly, the kind of person who wants to start a business is an action taker, right? Usually it's somebody who wants to take action on something. And so they're very, very often our biggest weaknesses are born of our biggest strengths. And so if you are an action taker, then you might feel like you're the one who's always supposed to be taking the action. But your business can only grow so far to the extent that you're the one always taking the action. In fact, if your business ever needs you to be taking action, then its need for you to take that action is the thing that's slowing it down. Now, in the beginning, obviously, you've got to take some actions, but the goal should be to move to a place where you are doing the things that are maximum return on investment for your activities. So in my case, for example, when I had my first business, I started in my living room. My garage was my warehouse. And I landed a contract where I had to refurbish a bunch of computers. So we had these little handheld computers, and we were buying them from one company and selling them to the other. And then we had to refurbish them. So I'm off in the, in the garage with, brushes and cleaning them and all this kind of stuff. And then suddenly I thought to myself, you know what? Do I really like doing this? No. Do I want to be doing this in 3 or 4 or 5 years? Absolutely not. Would I be worth more money to my company if I was doing something else? Yes. How can I arrive at that math? Well, for me to hire somebody to clean this equipment might cost like $10, 10 pounds an hour. I was in England at the time, might be 10 or 15 pounds an hour at that stage 20 years ago. But if I were in the sales room, I could be making 100, 200 or 300 pounds an hour making sales calls. And so every hour that I was doing this work, I was costing my company money. That was a big realization. That was a very big deal. And that led to my first employee, my first asking for help. And I would suggest that if I didn't do that day, I would never have grown a business. I needed to recognize that I have to ask for help and that I can't do it all myself because I only have so much energy or only have so many hours in the day. And so entrepreneurship is ultimately about leverage. And one of the things that you're leveraging is other people's energy and other people's skills. So that's one mistake that I definitely made early on, and I corrected it fast.
Okay, good. We can go here from mistake number 2.
Mistake number 2. I left in case you just had anything you wanted to add to that or what have you. But mistake number 2, which is related to mistake number 1, is hiring the wrong people. I've done that a few times, and it's something that I want you to know, especially for those of you who are really like in early stage startup. There's 1 or 2 of you in the company. Maybe there's less than 5 or 6 of you in the company. Look, when a big company hires the wrong person, they can live through it, right? Sure, they spent money recruiting, they spent money interviewing, they spent money training, they're paying the salary, and 6 months later, they realize that they've hired a very nice but ineffective person. All right, they can survive that mistake. They shouldn't, but they can. But you and me, we don't want to make that mistake. We don't waste all that money. And so there's 2 things that I often suggest here to recognize is that there are definitely different personality types. And so one of the things that I'm always looking for is to make sure that I'm hiring somebody for the role that they will be best at, that they will enjoy the most. And so that means that you meet somebody and they're looking for a job and you need somebody to do this job. You don't go, well, you're looking for a job. I've got a job. I should just hire you. And most of us have done stuff like that at least once, right? Instead, it means taking a really hard look and saying, hey, is this person detail-oriented? Are they more introverted? Are they more extroverted? Do they enjoy paperwork? Do they enjoy being with people? Like what kind of skills, what kind of personality do they have relative to the job that you're hiring? And, there are some people who are like, oh, personality profiling, that doesn't really work. You know what? I'll tell you something. That when they hire at airports people to do the air traffic control position, controlling all the planes that are coming in, they test them heavily to find out what their personality is. And if you don't agree with personality testing, let me ask you, if you're coming in for a landing in the plane with lots of other planes in the sky, stormy day, do you want a creative person doing the air traffic control? I don't think so. I think you want a detail-oriented, fastidious person who's going to get the job done. You don't want somebody who's going, I think I have another way of getting these planes on the ground. No. And so I would say the same thing. I remember I hired a very nice, ineffective person in my company. I was looking for a salesperson, and, he seemed generally personable. He was a nice person. I hired him. And I kept him for like 2 years, because he sold just enough for me to lose a little bit of money every month, right? He sold just enough. But the fact is that I would have done myself a huge favor by letting him go way earlier. And you know who else I would have been doing a favor? Him. What do you think? That's what finally woke me up one day, is my business mentor said to me, well, Eric, you think you're doing him a favor by leaving him on because he needs a job and he has a rent to pay. And I said, but the fact is, if he's underperforming, he knows he's underperforming. How do you think that? How does his self-esteem feel about that? In other words, you're not doing him a favor at all. And I realized it was true. Keeping somebody in a job that they don't like, that they're not that good at, is bad for both of you. And I've made that mistake, and I think it's important that people don't. The other part of that mistake is just, this is, very simple, but it's interviewing better. And one of the things that we just don't seem to do in an interview, that we don't do well in an interview, is challenge the candidate. We just sort of interview them. We see if we like them. We see if their skills seem to be a match. Does their resume look good? And if we like them and the resume looks good, they're hired. And what I'm saying is, no, these days you really got to give them some tests. You got to push them a little bit. We teach in our programs a really powerful interviewing technique, but I'll give you one clue right now. Think of the trait you really want them to have. Let's say you're hiring for sales. Well, then you need to figure out a way in the interviewing process to make them prove to you that they're really good at selling. The easiest way, reject them. Tell them that you've enjoyed the interview. Tell them that you really like them. Tell them their resume looks good, but tell them that they just don't seem like a really great salesperson to you. And then find out what kind of reaction they give you. And if they can't sell themselves at that point, probably you shouldn't hire them, right? And so, yeah, that's the second mistake, is hiring the wrong people. And I think the two key ways to avoid that is really understand that there are personalities that match positions, and you should really study that sort of thing and make sure you get it right. There's the Myers-Briggs test, there's the DISC tests, there's the Colby Index, and there's the 8-path system that we teach at the Business Freedom Experience. There's lots of great ways of making sure you match up personality traits to the role. And then the second thing is interview in a way that gets them to prove to you they have the skills you want them to have.
Yeah, sounds good. And any other things that, how to actually really make that as an advantage, not as a disadvantage or this mistake, how to turn that into your advantage?
I don't understand
This mistake, a lot of people do this mistake, but how to actually turn that into your advantage?
Well, I think that when one of the things you can do is, let's say you have hired the wrong person into the wrong role. And I've had this happen in the past, is that I've realized that they're the right person, but they're in the wrong role. And so then what you do is identify the role that would be perfect for them and move them there. And then you've turned the disadvantage into an advantage immediately, because you know them, they're loyal, they've been working with you for some time, so you trust them. And then you just realize, well, maybe they shouldn't have been in sales, but they should have been in administration. Like, I had a woman who worked for me for a while, and she was not particularly good in the sales department. She was okay, but she wasn't particularly good. And so one day we sat down and we looked at what her skills were. And I noticed something, that of all the salespeople, she was the only one that always got her sales reports on time, all the time. She got them done. They were correct. You could read them. Her handwriting was good. Like, she clearly was detail oriented that way.
But no results.
What's that?
But no results.
Well, medium results, but you're right. I mean, not results that made me want to keep paying her to be a salesperson. And so, but then instead of letting her go, I said, well, wait a minute now. She understands the sales department now. She knows all the salespeople. She knows the key customers. She knows how we sell. She's a great backup salesperson. So let's put her in an operations capacity where she helps the salespeople get their paperwork done. We turned a problem into a huge victory.
Amazing. That sounds good. So mistake number 3.
Oh, this is guys, please hear me about this. In psychology, there is this principle called the problem of the other mind. And the way that works is that sometimes we try to guess what other people are thinking. We try to guess. It's like in poker. We're trying to guess what's going on the other side. The trouble is that our guesses are informed by the way we think. Let me put it another way. If you are basically trustworthy, you do what you say you're going to do, your word is your bond, and you are trustworthy, then I know something about you. And that is that you've been ripped off a few times. You've been taken advantage of a few times. Why? Well, because you're trustworthy, because you do what you say you're going to do, because your word is your bond, you think other people are like that too. And not all of them are. And so the problem is that if you're very trustworthy, you will likely be very trusting. And that's been very much my case in business, is that many times I've been too trusting. And so, I'll give you a great example. I was running a business in Northern California, and we were in a very tight financial situation with one of our projects, launching a new business, and we were struggling with a bunch of things. And then all of a sudden, a guy introduced me to a person that on paper was perfect. On paper, he was perfect. He was a senior executive at one of the largest entertainment company and entertainment technology companies in the world. He on paper, he was absolutely brilliant, and he was prepared to invest his own money. And so we're like, this is awesome. This is great. So, now this is the carry where if you're really trusting and you're really optimistic, you see things the way you want them to be, not always the way they are. And so we accepted the investment from this guy. He said, well, look, I'll put the investment in, but then you need to let me manage the company. And we're like, well, he's putting in enough money. He's definitely vested. Who's going to take better care of his money than him? And so we did that. And then I will tell you that, a couple of months later, I was at an event in Los Angeles, and I bumped into some of his coworkers at that event. And they said, we're really curious why you hired him. And I said, well, because this, and this. And they said, geez, we wish you'd talk to us first. And I said, what do you mean? And they go, well, look, sometimes what happens in the corporate world is that people just sort of, they get on this corporate elevator and they just keep getting lifted because they're in the right place, and they get lifted beyond their capacity. And this dude was definitely lifted beyond his capacity. I'm sitting in this restaurant going, you're kidding me. And then I thought about all the different things that had gone wrong and what have you. And they were absolutely right. Then to make matters worse, basically he ran the company into the ground that he was running, and then sued me for his money that he invested into the company. And so again, overly trusting, overly optimistic, massively expensive mistake. How could I have fixed that? Calling some references, doing a better background check, really making sure that I knew who I was doing business with.
Now I'm totally being in the same category on that. Like, I'm honest. Why shouldn't anyone else be? But not in all cases, they aren't. So, but mistake number 4.
Mistake number 4 was one that I made in my first business, and I haven't made it since, but it's really a big one. And for me, it was, excuse me. See, I don't even like talking about it.
Bless you.
I'm allergic to that mistake. But anyway, the mistake was being unwilling to do public presentations for my company. Being unwilling to stand up and do presentations in front of all the staff. And I just felt like some people are natural presenters and natural storytellers, and they should do that kind of thing, and I shouldn't. And so I held my company back really badly, because there were times when I was offered a chance to speak at this conference or that conference. And of course, I was so terrified and nervous of speaking that I just refused to do those things. And when I finally decided to learn about that stuff and to do it properly, I was able to look back at my first business and realize we would have been, no kidding, 10 times bigger if I had learned what I know now about speaking, about presenting, about storytelling. And so that's been one of the biggest, most expensive mistakes I've ever made. And it's a mistake that I clearly cleaned up and handled. And now it's a mistake that I love helping other people fix all day long.
And what to do to avoid that mistake?
Well, I think the first step is to realize why. The fact is that our society places a huge amount of value on the alpha person. And I don't mean, who can throw the spear the furthest and that kind of stuff. Our society recognizes people in celebrity as being some kind of alpha. And so, The person who in an industry can stand up on stage and speak cleanly, who can create attraction, that can entertain people, engage them, give them great information, that person creates an unbelievable amount of attraction that we call the stage effect. And so the first step is to recognize that that exists. The second step is to let go of the idea that some people are natural storytellers and some people aren't. That's rubbish. Everybody is a natural storyteller. Everybody was born a great communicator. They just got it taught out of them in school. They just got it taught out of them by their parents sometimes in their school environment. And so what they need to do is overcome that stuff. They should go to something like Toastmasters, or, they should, come to like our speaking academy, or go to somebody else's speaker training and learn to become comfortable. Because I'll tell you something, being an effective communicator absolutely helps you raise money for your startup. No question about that. Being an effective communicator absolutely helps you to get shareholders and that sort of stuff if you're going public and keeping them happy. Being an effective communicator helps you recruit the very best people in your company. It helps you to win new opportunities in new business and new clients. I mean, it is the most valuable asset in entrepreneurship. So let go of that mistake, move forward, and start making it happen.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I used to be also totally afraid being in front of three people, and it's changed so much. And not only the ability to be on stage and be in front of thousands of people, no problem for me anymore, but it's also the confidence in general, entering into meetings or whatever, it's just different. And with that said, you who are watching this, we want to give away one successful speaking strategies online course. And
that's great.
Yeah, and someone you're looking at this video, tell me a reason why you should be the one to getting that. What is your situation with the speaking, or how bad it is for you, and why you are the person who should be getting that? Write in a comment, and one of you will get. Can you mention what's the successful speaking strategies online course?
Absolutely. So our highest rated, most popular, most likely to sell out program is our live speaking academy program. And the fact is that more people would like to come to that than can, because we only do a few of them every year. And so a couple of years ago, we sat down with the team and said, look, you know what, we can't go to every country and take this program. And so we went into the studio and we recorded some of the really key principles, like how to become really comfortable on stage, how to prepare a talk so that you never need to use notes and that your talk is very time flexible, and how to create something we call broad spectrum appeal, so that you can be speaking at a conference and your topic might not be interesting for everybody, but your delivery is. And, so people aren't checking Facebook and they're sitting on the edge of their chair because they're loving your presentation. And so we recorded a digital program teaching those core principles of how to become a comfortable and effective speaker. And it's one of our most popular online products. So I'm super glad we're giving one away today.
Yeah. So let us know why you should be the candidate of getting one. What is your level of speaking and being on stage, your comfort? Mistake number 5.
Well, mistake number 5 has to do with people, and it has to do with mistake number 5 was a mistake I watched one of my employers do, and I occasionally make it softly, but I correct it quickly. And what happened was I was working for a gentleman in Vancouver, Canada, and he didn't really understand people, and on top of that, he was not very trustworthy. In fact, he was not trustworthy. And so as a consequence of being not the most honest, ethical person in the world, he didn't trust anybody else, right? It's the reverse of if you trust a lot, then you trust everybody. Well, he didn't trust anybody. And he didn't really understand people. And so I watched him, I worked with him for a long time, 6-7 years. And I watched him one day doing some planning. And basically he's like, well, Eric, you've done really well in the sales area. So what we're going to do is we're getting you, and he made me do a psychometric test. And the reason is that he was simply going to bring that psychometric test into his interviewing. And that was it. He was just going to start hiring people that matched my psychometric profile. Well, problem number 1 is he had a really hard time finding anybody that matched my psychometric profile, because everybody's a little different. But problem number 2 is that that's just one aspect of who people are. In other words, his business plan was just basically a big spreadsheet. And it was like, oh, I'll put one person here and put one person here and put one person here. And he wasn't at all giving thought to who those people were. And so as a consequence, he didn't really treat them like people. And so how this would show up is that somebody would be working there for a period of time, and then eventually they'd have quite a serious breakdown and they'd end up leaving or what have you. And then, you know, I would often be curious why they left or why they weren't happy or what have you. And what it almost always came down to was they were tired of being treated like an object. And I think sometimes what happens is that entrepreneurs are so creative that they spend their time very often in some other universe, and they forget that there's people around them that are making the real magic happen. And then they don't remember to treat those people with a lot of respect. Now, I said, I make this mistake from time to time. I do. And so here's a couple of ways you can fix it. I don't make it out of any lack of caring. I would like to think, and look, I might have employees watching this right now or watching it on replay because they do that sort of thing, right? And so, you know what? They might disagree. They might say, well, Eric, I felt like you weren't. Well, let me tell you something. I would like to believe that every one of my employees knows ultimately that I care, but that sometimes I might not remember to express it very well. Partly what that comes down to is, think about this. If you're a business owner, you probably have less need for certainty, for acknowledgement, for praise, right? Because employees often become employees because they have a need for those things. And so if they were to quit their job and become a business owner, who would pat them on the back? Who would appreciate them? Who would provide them with security? So that's why they're not a business owner. But now think of the problem with that. If you don't really need praise, if you don't even really care about it, if you don't really care about that sort of thing, then you're not going to see the value in it. And therefore you might not do it for the people who do need it. You see the problem? And so one of the things that I've been really good about is making sure that I have people around me that really watch that stuff. So for example, my wife, she totally gets that about people. You know, Andrea, the president of our company, she's really good at that with people. And so what happens is that every now and again, Andrea will say, hey, Eric, you know what? The team could really use a message from you. And I'm like, great, I want to give them one. I just don't know how often they need it. And so one of the things I think that's really important is to have somebody on your team that's connected to that energy and that can really remind you to give that energy to your people because they need it. Your people are the lifeblood of your company. And let me tell you something. In my company in England, we ran the company for 9 years before I sold it. And in all those 9 years, I lost one employee that I didn't want to lose. Think about that. Only one time did somebody quit and I wish they weren't quitting. There were times where somebody was leaving and I was glad they were leaving. We talked about it and I was, you know, it was like quit or get fired, right? And there were times, unfortunately, where I had to fire people. That stuff happened. But when I lost somebody, it was because I was happy for them to go, except this one time. And incidentally, the one time that the person left that I didn't want them to go, his father had passed away and left him for pubs, for restaurants that he had to go run. So it's not even like I lost him because, you know, he wanted to go. So I want you to think about that. One of my goals is that people should never want to leave. They should always want to stay and they should always want to advance. And the only way you're going to be like that is if they have a sense of family and connection and bonding and that you value them. I think that's incredibly important.
Oh, this is really powerful. And I like the idea of having someone who's keeping you accountable in a way of that, especially when you're creative.
Yeah.
That's something that happens for me as well. I tend to get into things I'm doing and then I'm losing the sight. It's like, you know, people are there, but you know, I enjoy them being around, but someone who's actually saying, well, now it's time for you to go out to team and give them some praise or give them a message or something. That's a really good one. We're getting some comments on the speaking thing, and I think I know who I want to give this for. Helen is saying that I'm even afraid to write an answer here. I really want to talk to people about my ideas and about business, but I'm in my head, I prejudge them and guess their answers and opinion. I know it's wrong. It doesn't get me to my purpose, but somehow I can stop doing it. So Helen, we're going to give you the Successful Speaking Strategies online course to get over it's advice to get over that and then getting the track of being on stage and being good with public speaking and comfortable with doing that. And give us more. If you have some more questions, we have the opportunity to ask some questions, and we're gonna give you some answers as well. So because we're gonna give one more thing away, we're gonna give away one Business Freedom Foundations program, and this is just briefly you can mention about that as well, Eric.
Sure. This is so when I started my first company, I was I was living in a little town in the west of England called Rington. And I realized I was starting a business, and it was a bit of a scary thought to me because I never really thought of myself as a business person. You know, I was like, wow, I'm going to be in charge of everything, you know, in my future. And so I started thinking about all of the business successes that I'd seen. And I basically created a plan, and I laid what I now think of as a really successful foundation to build the business on. And so one of the things that I'm asked for quite often when I get on podcasts and webinars all over the world is people always ask me, well, Eric, you know, what are some of the things that you think you should do to start your business successfully? And so in the end, I thought, wow, you know what? It's really what people are really asking for is what are some of the core principles that people need to apply to create a solid foundation upon which to build a really great business. And so we went into the studio and recorded this program, and we did it we actually had a live audience watching. It was a very, very exciting and powerful program with lots of Q&A. So it's not just like me talking, it's me talking, answering people's questions, and so on. It's very detailed program. And it's all about the core foundations required for entrepreneurial liberty or business freedom. It's like what needs to happen for you to be able to build that business. It's a super exciting program. Again, I'm glad we're giving one away and getting somebody the opportunity to get that foundation.
Yeah. So with that, I have a question for you again.
Sure.
Why? It's actually, I mean, the people watching.
Oh.
But I have a question for you as well. Don't worry. I have a question for those who are watching. Why would you want to achieve business freedom? Why would that be important for you? And also, we're going to choose one of you who is going to get the Business Freedom Foundations course. So please let us know in comments. Would be great to get to know. But from you, Eric, all those mistakes, there's so much more. I know there's so many more mistakes. I know you even wanted to create a program called 99 business mistakes I've done. Whatever it was, the end of that. But there's so much more of that. But what is about like achieving business freedom? What else there is like most important? What's the start point? Where should the people start if they want to go towards business freedom? And what is the most important? And maybe also in a think about it in a way when you were figuring it out on your own, like getting to the business freedom. What would you suggest for someone being in that situation?
There are a couple of things. I think one of the issues is fast recovery. And what I mean by fast recovery is that, challenges are going to come up, problems are going to happen, things that are going to happen that might even feel like they're fatal. Things are going to happen that you might think are going to put you out of business or, whatever. And I think that one of the key skills that the entrepreneur has to develop is a core fundamental optimism that one way or the other, it's going to work out. Now, I will point this out that a huge number of the multimillionaires in the world, if you look back at the background, the ones that made their millions in business, many of them have 1 or 2 or 3 bankruptcies in their past before they had their big success. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should go out there to get yourself a bankruptcy so you can have a success. But what I am suggesting is that when you realize that the worst possible outcome of anything is that you have to start again. And that you will then start again with knowledge, experience, and contacts that you didn't have when you started the first time. And so you've always made progress. And when you begin to realize that you're always making progress, well, then when something comes along and it's not perfect yet, then you look at it and go, okay, well, this may not be perfect, but how might it serve me? And what could be good about this? And really like going with the flow instead of fighting everything all the time. In a very real sense, one of the things that I enjoy a great deal, I enjoy kiteboarding. And so, kiteboarding provides all kinds of interesting metaphors for business. But, sometimes you're kiteboarding and then all of a sudden the wind will shift direction or a wave will be coming that's not quite the way you were planning and the trick you wanted to do or what have you. Well, I mean, you can argue with the wave if you want. You can argue with the wind if you want, but good luck with the argument, because I can tell you right now, you're going to lose. And if you lose an argument with a wave at that speed, it hurts a lot. And so instead, what you do is you adjust your plans and use the wave to your advantage. And, you know, I'll never forget the hardest day I ever had kiteboarding. I was out there about 2 kilometers out to sea. And I suddenly like jumped off a wave, but I hadn't yet learned how to jump. So I didn't mean to jump. And I'm flying through the air and I hit another wave. Bam. I mean, I hit it hard and it knocked all the wind out of me. And I felt like my bruises, and it was really painful. I mean, water might look soft to you, but I'm telling you, when you hit a wave at that speed, it hurts. And that was it. I gave up. I said, I give up. That's it with this stupid sport. I'm done. But the problem was I was 2 kilometers out to the sea. And so I had to get home, and I wasn't going to swim home. So, you know, I launched the kite back up into the air, and I got back up on my kite, and I'm kiting along going, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see another wave coming, and I'm like, what am I going to do about this wave? And I had 2 choices. The one is I could go straight into the shore and then the wave wouldn't get to me, or I could just ride the wave and it maybe might get me home a little faster that way. And so I decided to turn and go into the wave. This is the same wave basically that just wiped me out over here, right? You know, think about it. And I got onto the wave, and all of a sudden I'm riding the edge of this wave, and it's curling over me like this, and I'm inside the wave and I'm riding along, and pretty soon, I kid you not, I'm going, woohoo! And I'm having the absolute time of my life. And then I got home, and I'm the hugest fan of kiteboarding. I'm like, no, I love kiteboarding. And I even forgot that I quit kiteboarding 15 minutes ago out there out to sea. And so what I want you to know is the next time the wave comes along and hits you, the next time something knocks you over, you might be 5 minutes from woohoo, everything going exactly the way you want. And I think that's one of the skills that we all as business owners have to know, is that, you know, it's not the events that should determine the way you feel. It's you that determines the way you feel. The more unresourceful you feel because of an event, the more unresourceful you will be because of the event. Instead, you look at it and go, hey, you know what? If the universe has sent this to me, the universe must believe that I'm ready for it. And then you move on.
That's amazing. I know the kiteboarding, there are moments like that.
There are, and in business, and in relationships, and in parenting.
Yeah.
I think when people go, oh, having a business is too scary, or having children is too scary, or having a relationship is too scary. I'm like, you may as well give up. We didn't come into this life for it to be easy. You know, I love Jim Rohn always said, you know, don't ask for your life to be easier, ask for you to be stronger. Yeah.
Yeah. And just as a comment for kiteboarding, I think that's one of the greatest thing. If you've never kiteboarded before, and you want to feel what is the feeling of not knowing about something, not being able to do something, then try kiteboarding, because then you will get to know what it means to be like total beginner at something.
Yeah.
I felt that hard.
Find, you know, and I mean, I know this isn't about kiteboarding, but I'll tell you that it's a great metaphor for business, because it starts off difficult. You don't know what you're doing. You've got to trust your mentor. You've got to do the steps. You got to do the same steps over and over again. You know, it's like anything else. Business is not about learning 4,000 things. Business is learning 12 things and doing them 4,000 times. Same with everything. But here's the beautiful thing, is that once you've found freedom on the kite, once you can kite up and down the shore, and you can jump, and I can sail through the air, you know, suddenly it's like the same kind of feeling as business freedom. And so it's worth the early days of, you know, I always say this: business, entrepreneurship is the opportunity to work a little bit harder than other people for a short period of time, so that you can live a life that other people only ever dream about.
That's amazing. Okay, I want to give something away again, and this time it's actually the Business Freedom Experience course itself, which is a big thing, because this is a really amazing course. And then now, Eric, tell me one number from 1 to 31, because this is the number who have actually bought my books, and 12 copies or more of it. So I'm gonna give one away.
So I have to pick a number from 1 to 31, and that chooses who gets to take it. Here's the first thing I want to say for those 30 of you that bought 12 copies of that book and that are sitting here wondering if you get to come to the program. And for the rest of you who are thinking you should come to the program too, let me tell you this. We almost never give away tickets to this program. So I'm not sure how Roland convinced our team that that's a great idea, but it's not something we do. This is a very, very high-end program. It's extremely highly rated by our clients. It's a very intensive 5-day process that is the right combination of education, of business principles, and experience to test those principles so that you don't simply leave with a bunch of theories. You leave with practical steps taken. You will have more business freedom by the end of the 5 days than you had before you came. And it's work that I'm incredibly proud of. So if you're one of those 31 people, you should be very excited while I think about which number. And I think what we're going to do is, in celebration of democracy, where most people can vote at the age of 18, we're going to pick number 18.
All right. And the winner is Pille Mutli. Pille Mutli is the winner. So congrats. Let's make an applaud as well.
There you go. Well done. Congratulations.
Congratulations. And also we're going to soon pick someone who's going to get the Business Freedom Foundation's course. So keep your comments coming. And also now we're going to get a moment just to share you a little bit regards to Business Freedom Experience. As it's coming back to Estonia, I would really like to take a minute for you to also share how this program got created and actually why is it so powerful that it's getting such results that we already mentioned here many times? Why is it so powerful?
I think that one of the reasons that it's really powerful is that I have a way of looking at things where, look, a lot of times people, they know how to do something, but they don't know how to teach somebody else how to do it, right? The other expression is people who, what is it? People teach what they don't know. It's that kind of thing. Well, what I'm particularly good at is taking really complex things and making them really practical and simple for people. So when I sold my first business, I wasn't interested in teaching business. It wasn't even that I wasn't interested in it. I just never thought of it. And then one day I got this phone call, and it was a company inviting me to come and speak for a group of entrepreneurs, about 80 entrepreneurs in London, England. And so I traveled to London and I did this talk, and I loved it. And it was really fun because what I was talking about was the experience of building my company. And it reminded me about a lot of things that I'd forgotten about. Like I'd forgotten the feeling that I remember one day walking into my company, and there was this guy sitting over here and I didn't know who he was. So I went over to the warehouse manager and I said, "Who's this guy?" And they go, "Oh, that's the guy we hired." Like that was the first time my company hired somebody and I wasn't involved. They had a budget, they had procedures, they had systems, they were supposed to hire them. But, what a neat feeling that was for me. And so as I shared stories with them, it really reminded me of my entrepreneurial journey, because in 9 years, I probably had forgotten more things than you could imagine. And by telling the stories, it brought them all back. But then the next thing happened is that the audience asked me questions a lot about about how to do this and how to do that, how to market themselves, how to raise money, what to do when they have cash flow problems, how to hire, how to fire. They asked me just tons and tons of questions. And I really enjoyed something about it, was that I could feel their stress when they had the question, and I could feel their stress go away when they had the answer. And that's it. I started doing business. Matter of fact, from that first business talk, I immediately did my next business talk in Singapore about a week later. And then a few days later, I did a whole series of business talks all over Australia and New Zealand. And for the next 2 years, that's what I did. I just traveled around the world talking about business. So I was an accidental business speaker. And then at one of my talks in Sweden, I had a bunch of clients say, "Wow, Eric, we really appreciate you coming here. And we learn a lot when you do a keynote presentation for like an hour and a half. But, could we hire you as a business mentor or something?" No, I wasn't interested in doing that. And they said, "But well, could we hire you to come back and do a few days workshop instead of just this keynote?" And I thought a little bit about it. And in the end, they really pushed me quite hard. In the end, I agreed to do it. And a couple of months later, I went back to Stockholm and I taught our first ever Business Freedom Experience. It was a super intensive 5-day process that is, like I said, a good combination of education and practical experience. And there's a game we play through the full 5 days, and the game is like you running a real business and selling real things. And some of them might be things that your company has, right? Like we've had companies that they bring in samples or they bring in services and we show them how to go out and build a business. And so that means that on Monday, Tuesday, when the program's finished, they don't go home with a bunch of notes and no direction. They go home with inertia. It's like we already got the car moving and now all they have to do is keep it moving. And so we did that program in Sweden. Well, as it turned out, there was a guy at that program who was a promoter and he loved the program. He'd been promoting another one of the top business speakers in the world. I won't mention names, but he'd been one of the very, very top business speakers in the world. And he had a program as well. And this promoter had been to his program, this super famous business teacher. And he came to mine. He goes, Eric, I learned more in your program for a fraction of the money comparatively. We have to take your program everywhere. And so we started doing the programs in Oslo, and then we started doing them in Copenhagen. And then that's how eventually I ended up meeting Roland and bringing the program to Estonia. And now we've done them, we've done them all over the place now. And so it's one of our really, like, it's one of the things I'm most proud of, because people come into that program and they come out with a transformed business.